The Bible is not about doctrines and dogma. And I'm getting ahead of myself again. But the Bible's not about doctrine and dogma, because God really doesn't care what we believe anyway, because He has elect people that He designs to be the people He wants them to be. It's not about us, not in our control. If Christ said that He is the way, the truth, and the life, then no one gets to the Father but through Him. But then later He turns around and says that no one can come to Him unless the Father draws him. Well, that's a chicken and an egg. How are you going to have both without either? How are you going to have either without both? You have to have one first. And how are you going to get that one if He doesn't want you to have it? That's the Spirit, and you only get the Spirit when He gives it to you. Because He says God hears not the sinners. If God does not hear the sinner, then how's He going to hear the sinner pray to be forgiven? It's not about us or our will. Our will has nothing to do with it. It's all about His will. By His will begat He us. Anyway, so like I say, I stopped writing there. But I had the headlines, the topics typed out first. Is the Bible about religious observance, holidays, and going to church? Well, it can't be about going to church because it didn't have a church in the first place when it was written. Even synagogues, you had a temple. The final temple was torn down in 70 A.D. Everyone knows that. How the hell are you going to keep the law by doing good deeds? If you want to do good deeds, you got to keep the Torah. You got to keep the law. That's doing a good deed. You can't keep all the commandments. You just simply cannot do it. By trying to be good, you're actually denying Christ and His atonement for us to forgive us in the first place, who has taken our sin anyway. By trying to act good, and the very act of trying to not sin, I believe, is actually caused by our own sin nature. That's our own pride. The whole idea of free will and how we can be good enough for God to accept us is contradictory to the Old Testament, which said you can't be good enough for God to accept you. You're fallen and accursed anyway. The only way to be atoned, the only way to be right with God is through blood sacrifice, which Christ did for us. It's not about us or what we do or what we believe, because we can't do or believe anything right without God's Spirit being put in us in the first place. And then, like I said, after that, we become the person He wants us to be. The Spirit keeps us from it. The Spirit holds us back. Going to church is irrelevant because nobody believes the truth anymore anyway. The whole church is reprobate. The whole church is apostate at this point. It's beyond the point of repair. It's past the point of no return. It's just going off the cliff. It's headed off the cliff. It's a stampede. You can't turn it back. It's just going. It's gone. Holidays, religious observance, going to things like the Mass, going to the synagogues. None of this stuff is biblical. It was never in the Bible. It was never in the Bible to do any of this stuff. The only observances they were supposed to keep biblically were the Jewish or the Hebrew feasts throughout the year, one of which was the Day of Atonement. That's already gone. If you can't keep that one, the rest that's the main one. So the rest are voided as well. So if that's done away with, then there are no observances left. There's nothing left to do. There's no point to any religious observance except to keep it alive in the minds of the people that they're actually active and part of something. That's why it's there. It's all just hype and sort of make-believe. Modern holidays are all pagan anyway. I just said Christmas is pagan. That's goes back to the Saturnalia and the day that when the sun dies on the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year. And 3 days later it was said to come back to life, which is why all the ancient sun gods were born on the 25th of December. Because it was born on the 25th and it dies on the 22nd. And goes into the underworld for 3 days and then comes back to life. And it's a cycle of renewal every year. It happens every year, so they had a festival there every year. And Rome, it was called the Saturnalia. But it goes back further than that. It's much older than that. It goes back all the way to, really, that is, the solstice there may well be the oldest form of paganism, is this the rituals of the solstice and bringing the sun back to life. But by the time you get down to Rome, it was pretty much just drunken revelry and just debauchery. And it pretty much still is. Everything about it is anti-Christian, but nobody cares because they're not Christian anyway, because they don't believe anything anyway. Maybe they believe in some kind of a God, maybe they believe in, not killing people, but hey, that's not saying a hell of a lot. Everyone thinks they're fine, they're good people, they're not trying to hurt anybody, they think they're okay, but they're not. Easter is just as bad. Easter goes back to Ishtar, her descent into the underworld. It's about the worship of the feminine principle, Mother Earth, the spring goddess, everything coming back to life from the dead of the winter. That's why you have the Easter Bunny, because it's all about fertility and sexual rights. They used to have temple prostitution, and again, all manner of debauchery. Then you have Halloween. I mean, for fuck's sake, Halloween is as obvious as anything. It's just the old Celtic harvest festival from the Druids, when they would sacrifice people, burn them alive to ensure the next year's harvest. They would give you a pumpkin full of fat to burn to ward off the evil spirits. If you offered them, if you gave them a sacrifice, if you did not offer them something to sacrifice, it is said that they would put a curse on you. Thus begins trick-or-treating. This shit is, people know this shit now. This shit has come out. 10 years ago it was relatively unknown, but thanks to the invention of the internet, pretty much the only people that still believe that shit is people that don't care that God hates it. All of these main holidays are actually, well, they're actually Christmas and Easter are based off of two of the quarter days, Yule and the spring equinox, so the winter solstice and the spring equinox. Halloween is Samhain, that's a cross-quarter day, halfway between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. These are pagan holidays, so-called witches' Sabbaths. They do go back into the ancient world. It is very, very pagan. In the Druid world, they were days of human sacrifice. It is said that people that run the planet today are Druids, and they still sacrifice people on those days. So to take part in these festivities, these festivals, these holidays are actually adding your energy to their practice of worshiping Lucifer. Basically is what it boils down to. It's just all about drumming up the energy. Then there are other days. I mean, we just had Valentine's Day. About everyone just thinks that's a cute little holiday. It's not. It's based off of Eros. Cupid is the Roman version of the Greek Eros, basically the god of sex. And that's based on February 14th, which is 13 days after Imbolg, which is one of the cross-quarter days on February 2nd. And January 20th is 13 days in front of it, which is why they put the inauguration day for the presidents on January 20th, because it's 13 days away from Imbolg. The inauguration of the presidential cycle every 4 years actually occurs on leap years. The election occurs on the leap years, such as this one, 2016. The leap year cycle, the presidential cycle being based on the leap year cycle, it's actually based on the Olympic cycle of the old Greek calendar, which was based off of the 4-year cycle. They actually had 4 separate games, or 3 games, and then the 4th was all 3 together. So they have the Olympics every 4 years now. It's all paganism. Everything you look at, everything you see is paganism. It's based in ancient rituals, ancient practices. Nothing in the modern world is what they tell you it is or want you to believe that it is. Groundhog's Day. I forgot that is Imbolg. Tell you how long winter's going to be. Anyway, enough of that. Basically, I'm saying there is no religious observance required by God. What is required by God is to stop observing these things. Stop taking part in all these things. That's what he wants you to do, not make more crap to do. Stop participating in them. Not only are they not biblical, they are anti-biblical. They are anti-Christian. They are anti-God, anti-Yahweh. It's promoted as being earth worship, mother, the Mother Earth crap, the goddess principle. That's bullshit. Anyway, then I said, is the Bible about prophecy? I didn't write anything down for that. Maybe I should have. The Bible is not about prophecy because every prophecy in the Bible is post-dated after the prophecy it was supposed to have foretold, written after the fact. The prophecies that weren't written after the fact are the ones that never happened. And those are the ones that everyone's still looking forward to today, as they think that for some reason, some guy in the Middle East 2,500 years ago happened to have a vision one day about everything in the post-Christian era after the Age of Grace 2,500 years later, and somehow it made perfect sense to him, even though they had no concept of Christ or Christianity, or especially what it would be 2,000 years after its inception. Yet somehow it's all supposed to make one big cohesive picture of biblical prophecy, and it all goes together perfectly and paints a picture of perpetual prophecy, which means that it's always talking about today. No matter when it is, now, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 500 years from now, it's always perpetually talking about today, right now, and world events as it occurs today. That's because it wasn't talking about anything in the first place. It wasn't talking about any of that. The book of Revelation It's pretty much an amalgamation of all the Old Testament prophetic books put into one book. It's pretty much all just, I would say, plagiarized, but they didn't have that concept back then. He was taking different parts of the different prophecies from the Old Testament that no Christians actually read anyway, and then he just put them into one book. Revelation is actually a very Hebrew book. It incorporates Isaiah, it incorporates Ezekiel, it incorporates Daniel, it incorporates Joel. It's talking about what it's talking about, but it's not talking about what everyone thinks. And it's sure not talking about Christian dispensationalism or the goddamn Larkin charts that everyone in the 20th century tries to use, and all these, they have everything planned out, and they got the statue of Daniel there. And everyone's looking for the tribulation. I'm convinced the tribulation doesn't exist. I thought it did for a long time, but it just doesn't fit. The 7 years, it does not fit. I know that the 1260 days, I know the 3 times and a half. He actually got that from Daniel. Daniel talked about it. I think it actually goes back to Babylon and Belshazzar and the writing on the wall, which was about a system of weights and measures. And if you look at it, it actually came out to 3.5 weights. And that was prophesying the fall of Babylon, which makes sense why John would talk about it too, because he calls it Babylon. The final empire he calls Babylon, even though Babylon had already fallen. He's quoting Daniel. And everyone's looking for this timeline. And if anything, these guys are actually using this supposed Christian expectation of the fulfillment of biblical prophecy to actually use as a playbook of what to do to convince them that it's prophecy being fulfilled. And that's what I believe it is. I don't believe it's actually fulfillment of prophecies, because I believe they're talking about something else that had already happened. The abomination of desolation had already happened with Antiochus when he sacrificed a pig and put up the Christmas tree in the temple to Ashtaroth. That was the abomination of desolation. It was the desecration of the temple. But the temple had already been destroyed by then anyway, so what's he talking about? Well, they say it's going to come again. It's going to happen again. They're going to rebuild the temple again, and they're going to have some other guy come in and desecrate the temple again. Because it wasn't talking about the first time. No, it's talking about some other time 2,000 years later. Because that makes way more sense, you know? No, what makes more sense is he was talking about what had already happened. And there again, Daniel's talking about it. That's because he was writing after Antiochus had done that anyway, and not 400 BC. And then I say it's the Bible about the Jews. And I will not say no, like I have on the rest of these, but it's not entirely. And the topic of the Jews is nearly unending. Because on one hand, you have guys that try to separate themselves as much as possible from anything remotely related to Judaism or Jewishness. But then you have other guys that try to incorporate themselves into it, no matter how far flung they are from it, to try to make themselves to be the Jews. When I'm not even sure the Jews are the Jews. I don't think anybody can know who they are. It's a bloodline. It's not a race. It's a bloodline. It goes from Adam, in the Bible down through Abraham, and supposedly it comes from Abraham on down through time. But supposedly, if you want to believe it, everyone, I mean, there are Jews all over the damn planet, just somehow just have gotten into every possible place they could be. That's a lot of kids for one man. If you want to think of everyone's lineage as coming from one person 3,000, 4,000 years ago, what it would end up being is all these different bloodlines just interconnecting and mixing all together in just some big wash of humanity. So nobody can keep it straight as to who's who anymore. I'm convinced you really can't keep it straight. And I think only God knows who's who and who isn't. But I do know. What I do know is what the Bible is about. And what the Bible is about is covenant. In one word, that's what it's about. Not about what you do or what you don't do, what you believe or what you don't believe. What it's about is what God said. God made a deal. God made a pact. God made a covenant, a contract with Abraham. And that's where it started. And that is that's the crux of the Bible. That's one bookend. That's one side. The other side is Christ. But there would be no point for Christ if there was never a covenant with Abraham. That's two sides of the same coin. So what the Bible is about is that covenant. God made this covenant with Abraham and his lineage forever. Forever. It's not based on time. It's not counting down. It's not going to run out. It is. It is. If you believe that God is the creator of the universe, then his word creates the universe. He made a pact, a covenant with Abraham with his word. It has now become part of the fabric of reality. If you believe in Yahweh, which obviously I do. So it's not just something that is said or written down. It is part of reality, the creation, the cosmos. The cosmos that Christ died for. It doesn't say Christ died for everybody. It doesn't say he died for every person. It doesn't say he died for every individual. It doesn't say he died for every race, every culture, every creed. He died for the cosmos. That's what it says. He died for the world. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Not God so loved the people. God so loved humanity. God so loved anybody. He loved his cosmos. So something happened. Why does he have to die for the cosmos? His creation. The cosmos is the creation in total. Not just the people, the entire planet. The entire whole thing. Something happened where he has to atone for everything. The earth, the air, the water, the rocks, the mountains. Something happened. People don't understand this. They don't want to understand it because they want to simplify it and dumb it down to doing this and not doing that, and God's going to love them and they'll be okay because they did a few good things and they didn't do a bunch of bad things, so hey, they're fine. Muslims can say that. Buddhists can say that. Hindus can freaking say that, and they believe in limitless numbers of gods. They have so many damn gods. It's not even. It's hilarious that they actually call it a religion. They have a god for everything in sight. But that doesn't make them bad people. They can be fine people. They can be good. They can be kind. They can be moral. They don't have to be psychopathic killers. I mean, they're all right. They live a good life. Maybe they'll rise up the ranks in the caste system. Maybe they'll get to be a Brahma one day. They live a shitty life, they'll end up as a dog or something, How it goes. Wonderful religion, that is. Everyone thinks they have past lives. They want to be some king or queen or something like that. Well, no, if you're going to believe in reincarnation, you have to pick up where they left off, and they pretty much tell you everyone used to be an animal at some point. So that's what everyone wants. They want a past life where they were rich or something, rich and famous. When in reality, if you had a past life, you were probably a cat, a nice little house cat. Maybe you had a nice home to live in. Nobody wants to be a dog, but they want to believe in reincarnation. That's how stupid people are. They can't see both sides. They can't see what it is. They just want all the positives of everything, but none of the negatives, including Christianity. Anyway, it's about covenant. God made a covenant with Abraham, with his seed. And so then what the Bible becomes is a bloodline. And that's what the supposed history of the Bible is about, is the narrative, the story of this bloodline. Traced all the way from Adam, all the way down through the lineage of kings, all the way to the deportations, which is pretty much where the Old Testament ends, is when they come back from Babylon and they start trying to rebuild Jerusalem. That's where the Old Testament ends. When the New Testament begins with the lineage of Christ, both Matthew and Luke start off with the lineage of Christ, even though they are divergent, two different ones. One gives 64 generations, the other gives 77 from Adam to Christ. But the point is they're trying to link Christ back to David, and through David to Abraham. But they're trying to make him the king, see? He's the king of the Jews. Well, he's not going to be the king of anybody if he's not related back to David. So they start off by telling you that he's related to David. So that's what the Bible's about. Christ is God, comes back to atone, which is what the law that it was given to Moses states. Now, presumably the law was just putting into written form what was given to Abraham. It was already known beforehand, but was not written down until later. And then it was later expanded on with the Levitical Code. What nobody knows is that Christ dying on the cross is an atonement sacrifice. Even though there had not been a viable or valid sacrifice since the deportation, because the ark was removed, as Ezekiel states. And Ezekiel 10 is talking about how the ark was carried out of the temple. It was hidden in a safe place so as not to be stolen by the invaders, by Babylon. Anyway, according to the Torah, you had to have this ark to make sacrifices, and they didn't have it. It goes back to Adam and Eve. And they sinned, as the story goes. They were kicked out of the garden. They had a curse put on them. And something people always overlook is that God himself, which is Christ, performed the first atonement for Adam and Eve. He killed an animal and made clothes for them with its skin. It's kind of glossed over, but that's actually an atonement. Blood atonement. Next thing you see is Cain and Abel. And they offer sacrifice to God. Everyone knows Cain killed Abel, but they may not know why. It's because they both made a sacrifice to God. Cain made a sacrifice of fruits and vegetables. He's a nice hippie, I guess. Abel offered his animals. Offered their blood. God accepted his sacrifice, not Cain's. Cain became enraged and killed him because God had favored him instead. This is why there was a mark put on Cain. Adam and Eve had another son called Seth, and he took the place of Abel, and the lineage continued through him, all the way down through Enoch and Methuselah, Lamech and Noah. Then of course Noah's flood came. God saved them, Noah and his sons and their other wives, 8 people in total. And here is something else nobody knows. There were 8 people. When Noah was after the flood, it says Noah made a sacrifice to God. What sacrifice is he making? What legal system is there that tells him he has to make a sacrifice? Nobody's saying any of this. It goes back to Adam. There's no law. It just is what they did beforehand. It was always happening, all the way back. The reason there were 8 people, it's no coincidence, that they did not take 2 of every animal. They took 2 of all the unclean animals, and they took 7 of the clean ones, because they used them for food on the ark for the year. 7 clean ones. 7 of all the clean ones. And 2 of the unclean. It is said that they brought in 2 people from the lineage of Cain, and that they were counted among the animals. Well, the point is, Noah was a priest of Yahweh, same as his fathers before him, going back to Abel. And the 7 members of his family were considered the clean animals. And then you would have had 2 unclean animals, presumably. Anyway, then Noah had a son, Shem. Shem became the Melchizedek. Abraham was told by God to leave to leave Babylon, to leave Ur. He and his family were priests there. They went back to Jerusalem, went back to Salem. Abraham met with a person called the Melchizedek, but he was really the priest of Salem, the priest of God. Who's the priest of God going to be? It's going to be Shem, the one after Noah, who was still alive at the time of Abraham. What Abraham did was, what Shem did was pass on the priesthood to Abraham, which is why God made the covenant with him. That is a post-diluvial covenant, a new covenant, if you will, with Abraham, that continues the old one on. Anyway, so they call Shem the Melchizedek, the priest of righteousness. Well, that tells you what he was. That it was an office. It was a post, an occupation, which all of his fathers had before him. They were all Melchizedeks. And then as was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. After that they would be atoning. They would be making sacrifices, and this would be atoning for the family. Presumably for the family of Adam, the entire lineage of Adam. Then there's a story about them going off into Egypt and staying down in Egypt for hundreds of years until you get to Moses. Moses and Aaron, after they leave Egypt with the Hebrews, receive the law from God. And what this law does, as I said before, separates them from the rest of humanity. The covenant with Abraham separated them from the rest of humanity because it was made just for the lineage of Abraham. But the law sets it in writing, sets it in stone. That the only people that can be accepted as having been atoned in the terms of the law of the Torah are the people of the lineage of Abraham. It only concerns them. It concerns nobody else. They're the only ones that can be atoned for, which is still in effect all through the centuries as you count them down till you get to Christ, who makes an atonement sacrifice as a priest, as not the priest of the Levitical priesthood, because the Melchizedeks were split. The Melchizedeks became the kings, and the atonement sacrificial process was given to the Levites. The kings went through Judah, and the priests went through Levi. That's why it's called Leviticus. You get down to Christ. He made the atonement sacrifice. For the people of the covenant. Not for the world. Not for humanity. Not for everybody. In fact, the Bible says that God does not love everybody. It is said that the place they took the Ark of the Covenant to was a cave under Golgotha, which is the very place they took Christ to crucify him. They beat him very severely, to the point where he would be bleeding profusely. It says the ground split open in an earthquake that happened. So that what would have happened was that his blood would actually run down and touch the ark. It would run onto the ark, where he was actually both priest, Melchizedek, and sacrifice. Only the priest could officiate. The priest had to go in on the Day of Atonement. They had to choose between two goats. They chose them by lots. They would take, now this is another thing people don't understand. There were two goats, and they would take one goat. They would have stones. They would place them on their heads. They would choose them by lots. Out of a bag, they would pick the stones, put the stones on the head of the goats. If it was the Yahweh goat, would be sacrificed to Yahweh, and his blood would be sprinkled on the ark. Then there was the Azazel goat, which would be cursed, and all the sins of the nation would be put onto the Azazel goat, and that goat would be taken out and killed, or thrown off a cliff, or whatever. They get to Christ, and he is, of course, the sacrifice to Yahweh. And his blood goes under the ark through the cracks, the split in the ground, under the cave where the ark was. Judas, on the other hand, was the scapegoat. Scapegoat is referring to Azazel. The curse was put on Judas. Judas went out and was killed. He was a scapegoat. There's no way around it. Judas took our sin, not Christ. Christ did not take our sin. Christ atoned for our sin. But that's not all. That's not what it's about. That's not all that it's about. This world has become infected, not with sin, but with what should be called the sin nature. And like I said, everything is infected with it. All the dirt, all the water, and the air we breathe on the planet is infected with it. It's in our blood. It's in our bodies. God was not so concerned with our actions and forgiving us of our sin. All religions, basically by definition, give you a way to live and to progress into some kind of an afterlife. The Bible does not give you a method of how to get to the afterlife. That would be to reduce Christianity and the Bible to the level of other religions. It is not a method that you can apply to yourself to get what you want and get where you want in the universe. You want to get to God, well, use the Bible. It'll show you how. That's not what it is. God was atoning for the cosmos, like I said, which is rectifying the whole thing. What it is, the cosmos somehow, some way became infected with a disease. And Christ's atonement, the blood of God, he was not born of a man. He was not conceived. He infused himself into the womb of Mary to basically, for her to give birth to him. He basically fathered himself through what would be called the Spirit. And he was born into a world that was diseased. He was the only thing in it that was not diseased. And the disease is the best way I can put it. There's no better description for it, other perhaps than radioactivity. But I think disease is better. Christ's blood and his atonement sacrifice is like an injection, an infusion of pure blood, to give those people that he atoned for an immunity against the disease, so that when they live and when they die, they're not overcome by that disease. All this phraseology, terminology in the Bible, the blood of Christ, the baptism of the blood, the baptism of the Holy Ghost, of fire. All these things are just their way of expressing this concept of being rectified with God and purified from the contamination that is the earth and this life. Whatever it is that contaminates us predates humanity, so that Adam himself was created with this sin nature, this inability, this addiction, this inability to stop, to keep himself from. We are not all born in sin. We are sin. It is our nature. It is the property of our life, of being alive. It's not about what we do, it's about what we are. We do what we do because we are what we are. Christ is not concerned about what we do so much as he is what we are. And he will rectify what we are so that we then do different things. And that's the point of Christ's atonement, is to cure the disease of this planet, this dimension, which has been infected with some kind of demonic presence, demonic energy. And that is the point of the Bible. That is the reason why it is what it is. I believe in Yahweh. He has shown me what he wants me to know. He's given it to me to know and to believe. I believe it because I believe God. I know God. I don't believe Yahweh because I read it in a book. I believe there's truth in the book of Yahweh because I know Yahweh. He has dealt with me directly, so I believe in him. I don't believe in Allah. Never seen Allah. When I died, I saw God. I saw Christ, who is Yahweh. They are the same being. Yahweh is not the Father. Christ is not the Son. They are the same thing. Christ is called the Son because he was born. Anyway, so I saw Christ. I don't believe in Christ. I know he is God. You see him, you wake up on the other side, you just know. You don't have to be told. He doesn't have to tell you who he is. You know who he is, and you know he's God. And I come back here. He sends me back. And I don't need the Bible to tell me who he is. I know who he is. I don't need Christians telling me who he is. I don't need doctrines and dogma and church history telling me who he is, because those people didn't know anyway. I don't need the Bible to believe. I'll tell you what the Bible needs. The only thing you need to believe in Yahweh, the only thing that has to be real, is a covenant, a bloodline, and Christ. That's all there has to be. Some guy in the remote history around 2000 BC who became known as Abraham had to exist. God made a covenant with him and his bloodline that then went down through the centuries down to Christ, who completed that covenant. That's all it has to be. Everything else is there. It's in the Bible. You can believe it or not, but it's secondary. All that has to be true is the covenant, the lineage, and Christ. That's the point of the Bible. That's what it's all about. And that's really all you have to believe. That's all you have to know. But then again, if God doesn't deal with you, you're not part of his family, then it doesn't concern you. It doesn't matter anyway. Paul said that he had selected a number of people from before the beginning. He already designed it in his mind for those people to be elect when he made the cosmos and put them in it. It's not open to everybody because he didn't die for everybody. The covenant is only for those it belongs to. Now, like I said, we don't know who those people are. If God deals with it, he deals with you. But it's all predestined. It's all planned beforehand. Everything's foreordained. The entire history of the world had to be what it was for everything to be what it is. Every person in everyone's family history had to be what they were, be where they were, when they were, had to get with who they got with for the family tree to be what it was, for us to be here now. All the wars had to be fought. All the cities had to be destroyed, rebuilt, destroyed again. All the migrations had to happen. All the natural disasters had to happen. Everything had to be the way that it was for everyone to be who they are now, and the world to be what it is now. And if you want to believe in Bible prophecy, you have to believe in predestination. Otherwise, prophecies could not come to pass anyway. You can't have God telling you what's going to happen thousands of years in the future and then have it be based on our free will to cause it to happen. But people can't even see that they can't even make that connection. But they believe in prophecy and free will. So God says he would not have us to be ignorant. And if that's the case, I cannot accept people who continually believe free will after you already explained predestination to them, as Paul does in Romans 3 and Romans 8:29. Romans 3:21, and that whole paragraph. I don't like the verses. I don't like the system of verses and chapters in the Bible. The chapters are too broad and the verses are too narrow. They should separate it into paragraphs, really. That's what it should be. Romans 3:21 starts a paragraph there through about verse 27. It talks about how we are saved apart from the law by the will of God, not through our own works, not through our doing good deeds or keeping the law. And then in Romans 8, starting at verse 29, he talks about how we are all predestined to conform to the image of Christ. Well, the elect are predestined to conform to the image of Christ. It's not through their will. He will cause it to happen through events that happen in their life, which they have no control over. And that's the point of the Bible. It's not about morality and what we should do and how we should live our lives. The point of the Bible is that it's not about us. It's about God and his cosmos, which we are a part of. And his cosmos, for whatever reason, became diseased. This dimension, I think of it as this dimension, became diseased. And he set out, he devised a way to rectify it, to heal it, to save it. And that is what we think of as salvation. It's not personal salvation, it's the salvation of the whole, the salvation of the planet. Anyhow, that is the point of the Bible. The covenant, the bloodline, and atonement through Christ. Christ died for the people he died for. They will find out and learn about it in their lifetime. As he sees fit, they will respond to him at that time. It's not about them. It's not about them praying prayers, going to church, doing good deeds, or anything. It's about him changing them into what he wants them to be apart from their will. You cannot choose to be a Christian. You cannot be born a Christian. You can't act like one and have God accept you as one. You have to be in the family, and you have to have him call you out of the world. That's what it means to be a Christian. Just like Abraham, he calls us out of Babylon individually, one by one, and we follow. That's what it's about.